Welcome to Touring with the Candidates, presented by the Santa Barbara League of Women Voters Education Fund. Each of the candidates for Santa Barbara City Council will have 15 minutes to take you on a tour of his or her city. The program is produced by Larry Nimmer and partially underwritten by Community West Bank. We hope you will enjoy the presentation.
Well, hello there.
Good morning.
And you are?
I'm Brian Barnwell. I'm a candidate for re-election to the Santa Barbara City Council. Welcome to my home.
Thanks for having us, Brian.
It's a pleasure.
Looks like you have a nice old craftsman home.
Built in 24. We're essentially the second owners of it. It's a lovely little place. 2 bedrooms, 2 baths. Here's some photos. This is me with my children, my son Brendan, my son Sean, my daughter Barbara. And here's a nice picture of the whole family that includes my sweet wife Cammie and her 2 kids, Alex and Sophia. Cammie used to work as a reporter with the News Press before its untimely implosion. And so here's a picture. You take pictures of the kitchen.
Okay, we got the kitchen.
Sweet little kitchen. I remodeled it. I don't know if you know, but I was a carpenter for years, so I did this remodel job. It's a nice kitchen. Now here, let me just quickly show you the backyard. Here's our little deck. My dog. This is my dog Demeter, named after the goddess of the fields. Nice little swing for the kids. Got some little tricycles over there. I collect beat up and worn down bicycles and then repair them and give them to the Goodwill and stuff at Christmas time for kids to have bicycles. So,
okay, shall we get it going?
Let's get going.
Okay. Okay, where are we now, Brian?
We're standing at the intersection of Hope and State Street. My themes in this 15 minutes that you've given me are going to be development and the future development of the city of Santa Barbara, and another theme will be recreation and youth. So I wanted to point out here that at this intersection you'll see some interesting things that I think Upper State Street should try to preserve. One of them is that the buildings set back from the sidewalk. They set back 10, 12, 15 feet, which allows some relief, and you'll notice how we can see the mountains out there and the trees. Particularly at the intersection with a 1-story building over there at the Montecito Bank and Trust, it opens up a nice vista. I think this part of town deserves to have those views preserved. Another thing, if you'll turn over here, another big 900-pound gorilla in the discussion of what do we do with Santa Barbara is La Cumbra Plaza. A really vibrant place, but very antiquated use of how to park cars. Look at this old-timey parking lot here. Imagine if that were covered over. What could we do with a first floor that was covered over at the level of the sidewalk? It could be green space. It could be a movie theater. It could be, who knows what it all could be. So this is another area that needs a lot of focus when we discuss our general plan, which we're in the midst of doing right now. So we can talk about this at another time. When we go down, I've got a couple other things downtown I'd like to show that have to do with the difference between this area and downtown development. This is an example of one of our local parks that I think could benefit from a re-examination. We're at McKinsey Park right now, up by the Y, De La Vina State Y. If you look at this very, very large area that is absolutely underutilized except for some homeless people here, this would be an excellent site for a small children's skateboard park. For a playground. There used to be a kids' playground here. It's been taken out. I think we need to create a master plan for our parks. This particular site is iconographic for me to give an example of what we need to do in the future to make our money felt in the neighborhoods. Our money has been felt well enough for the tourist trade. We now need to spend some money in our neighborhoods. This is a classic neighborhood park, McKinsey Park. There's a ball diamond over there that was the site of many victories for my son and I. I was a coach on Pony League baseball for years. It's a beautiful park, much used by the neighborhood, and certainly deserves more than this empty space here. This is continuing on my theme of development. We're in a unique little neighborhood here called Bungalow Haven. It's right next to St. Francis. It's one of these neighborhoods in town that I believe needs preservation, but is slowly being lost. it's a good example of how the people who live in the neighborhood can help preserve the feeling of their neighborhood. These neighbors wrote a document called the Bungalow Haven Preservation Ordinance, and it recognizes the unique character of these homes, and then also makes it extremely difficult to knock them down or to in any way alter them. Because what we have here is apartment land. This land, this ground here, is zoned R2 and R3, which means apartment buildings. Someone could come in, or they used to be able to come in, knock these things down and put up apartment houses and completely destroy the feeling, the ambiance. So my point here is that certain neighborhoods deserve preservation, and it's the job both of the city and the neighbors to work together to save these things. Not every spot can be saved. I don't believe that the town is a perfect example that needs to be preserved, but some areas definitely do, in my opinion, need to be preserved. We are unique. Santa Barbara is very special. And whatever we can hang on to maintain that cultural and historical preservation, I think it's very important to hang on to it. And here is a good example of success. And now for something completely different, downtown development. Behind me is the Paseo Chapala, which to my sensibilities of what downtown Santa Barbara should be, this building is just way too big. I am an advocate of a restriction in height limitations for downtown in the El Pueblo Viejo, which is the old area of town where we traditionally have the smaller buildings. This is a classic example, in my opinion, of a building that sits too close, lacks proper landscaping, and doesn't have any of the setbacks. I want to show you in a minute a building that sets back on the second and third floors, and in my opinion, gets closer to where I think Santa Barbara should be. If you look up Chapala Street, you can see historically what we have, which is 1- and 2-story buildings. I think 3-story buildings are appropriate on Chapala. I don't believe that the large buildings are. I think they're taking away our cultural and historical heritage. The nice little Victorian there is a good example of what we want to keep. Here's a 1-story building that clearly should go. I want to show you now what for me was the watershed event. This is the Salvation Army building, and I was on the Planning Commission when this came through, and we agonized over this. This was a, quote, big building for us. We decided to step it back. That's a phrase that architects use, to put the one wall several feet back from the sidewalk, and then to wedding cake it, which is to give the 3rd story even further distance and relief. Now that I look at it, I think it's a very beautiful building. I like it. But now, that was 10 years ago. Now look what we have now. Right next to the Salvation Army is this huge monolithic structure. It looks much bigger now because it's got the sheathing all over it. My question to the citizens of Santa Barbara is this what you want? Because the legal zoning rights that this property has to build this big exist on every parcel downtown. And the only way that we prevent these is project by project through the Historic Landmarks Commission and the Planning Commission, attempting to beat down these monstrous sized buildings which the developers are coming in with. I support the idea of a height restriction, and I think one of the best ways to get there is probably just to put it on the ballot and have a 40-foot height restriction so we don't have to struggle with this anymore. Because right now it's street fighting, guerrilla street fighting, door to door, project by project. I think we're losing a lot. And what's inside of those? Condominiums for the very wealthy. We do indeed get some affordable condos, but we pay a dear price for it.